Welcome back to Beyond the Bible. Today we're examining the political landscape surrounding the time of Jesus. It was a period of unrest in Israel, and it featured Jewish people banding together against oppressive regimes, ultimately culminating in our topic for today, revolts and rebellions. All of the New Testament was written in the span of just a few decades, and those decades were quite intense, full of political upheaval. But it wasn't just the New Testament period. The couple centuries before and after Jesus' time were rife with instability, enough so that some of the Jewish people were willing to fight and revolt against the governments ruling them. And today, I want to zoom in on the three most significant of those revolts and rebellions. First, we have the Maccabean Revolt, lasting from 167 to 160 BC. During this time, Israel was ruled by Greece, specifically the Seleucid Empire. Led by a ruler named Antiochus IV Epiphanes, the Seleucids attempted to Hellenize Israel, that is, try to change Israel to reflect Greek culture. Certain Jews wanted no part in this, and a priest named Mattathias sparked a full-on revolt by refusing to worship foreign Greek gods, killing a person who attempted to sacrifice to these gods, and then fleeing into the wilderness with his 5 sons. He then began to wage guerrilla warfare on the Seleucid army. Now, not every Jew was against the process of Hellenization, and in fact, the Jews on both sides of this issue fought against one another as well. Mattathias died shortly after the revolt began, and one of his sons, Judas, took over. He had the nickname Maccabeus, or the Hammer, and thus this rebellion is referred to as the Maccabean Revolt. Now in this instance, the Jews actually ended up victorious, pushing back the Seleucid army and establishing independent rule in 140 BC with the so-called Hasmonean dynasty. However, in the year 63 BC, Israel once again came under another foreign power's rule, this time Rome. Tensions became quite high between the Jews and Rome heading into the 1st century AD. The Jewish historian Josephus described the escalation in his writings, and he stated that in addition to the Jewish sects called the Pharisees, Sadducees, and Essenes, which I discussed at length in our last video, there was also a 4th philosophy, which he loosely termed the Zealots. Now the reality is this group was actually a variety of poorly organized movements that responded with armed force to Rome's rule. One of the first instances of organized resistance to Rome occurred in 6 AD, when a man named Judas the Galilean led an armed revolt due to a Roman census and its corresponding taxation. Josephus actually blamed the impending war that would occur 6 decades later on Judas, but most modern scholars do not. Additionally, there were sign prophets who enacted rebellion against Rome and freedom for the Jews in a performative manner. One such man named Theudas gathered a crowd and symbolically marched across the Jordan River, a reenactment of an Old Testament scene. Well, Rome quickly dispatched of this group, killing and beheading Theudas. Another man known only as the Egyptian had a bunch of people march around Jerusalem's walls with the expectation that they would fall down, just like in the Old Testament. Once again, Rome was easily able to scatter this band of people, even crucifying some of them, though the Egyptian got away. And all of this was a build-up to our second great revolt, known as the First Jewish-Roman War. In 66 AD, tensions between Israel and Rome were sky high, and Israel essentially declared independence from Rome. Roman military forces were deployed to put down the insurgents, but Israel initially prevailed against this threat. However, as the threat of multiple Roman legions marching towards Jerusalem was looming, chaos and disorder enveloped the city. A class struggle ensued between the ruling elites of this new interim Jewish government and the group known as the Zealots. And this group actually was comprised of multiple subgroups. One portion of the Zealots were simple bandits, vigilantes who would rob Roman supply chains and distribute goods to the population. Another subgroup were messianic pretenders, poor rural men from the northern region of Galilee who built up large followings. One such leader was a man named Simon ben Giora. he was quickly run out of Jerusalem, and another offshoot group formed around a certain individual named John of Giscala. Well, and finally, there were the Sicarii, or dagger men. Prior to Israel declaring independence, the Sicarii would make coordinated attacks on Jewish leaders who were sympathetic to Rome. They would hide in big crowds at Jewish festivals and then quickly assassinate leaders with their daggers, then dart out of the way, pretending to be in shock with the surrounding onlookers. Now, this loose group of zealots not only had issues with Rome, but also with the Jewish aristocracy. And so after Israel declared independence from Rome, the zealots overthrew the interim government and took over the war efforts against Rome. But not all was well. There was tons of chaos, confusion, and disagreement within the different factions comprising the zealots, which led to lots of infighting. At one point in time, the Jewish interim government actually invited Simon ben Giora back into the city in order to have him fight against other zealot groups in the city, even though Simon had been one of their enemies. But all of this infighting took a back seat once the Roman legions arrived at Jerusalem's gates. Rome proceeded to wage a multi-year siege, and though Israel had previously obtained small victories, they lost big time to the might of Rome. Jerusalem was destroyed along with the temple in the year 70 AD. A few who managed to escape retreated to Masada, a hilltop fortress that belonged to Herod, and eventually in 73 AD, after another lengthy siege, every single one of these dissidents died, ending the First Jewish-Roman War. Then about 60 years later, our third and final great revolt occurred, called the Bar Kochba Revolt. This revolt took place between 132 and 136 AD. It was precipitated by Rome attempting to reshape Jerusalem into Rome's image. The Romans renamed Jerusalem Aelia Capitolina and dedicated the old Temple Mount to the Roman god Jupiter. Jews from the surrounding countryside were outraged, and a man named Simon Bar Kochba led not only a revolt, but a full-scale war. Those who followed him referred to him as Bar Kochba, which means son of the star. He was regarded by many as a messianic figure. But not everyone was enthralled with him. A few centuries later, the rabbinic work called the Jerusalem Talmud actually calls him Bar Koziva, which means son of the lie. Well, much like the First Jewish-Roman War, the Jews had early success. They were even able to establish an independent state for 3 years. The war that they waged against Rome was massive. Several 100,000 Jews were involved, as were portions of numerous Roman legions, numbering tens of thousands, possibly even 100,000. And Rome suffered some significant losses. But so did the Jews. Rome wiped out hundreds of Jewish villages, and ultimately, Rome triumphed. In the aftermath of defeat in the Bar Kochba Revolt, Jewish religious thought became much more cautious and conservative. Gone were these days of banding together, taking up arms to rise against foreign powers in revolt. Instead, the Jews contented themselves to simply let things be, rather than poke the bear and suffer more heavy defeats. The concept of Jewish messianism changed from seeking after political and military leaders to a much more abstracted, spiritualized idea. And this mode of operating lasted for nearly 1,800 years, during which time people ran roughshod over the Jews frequently. Then, after the horrors of World War II and the Holocaust, the game changed again. The Jews were no longer willing to be a doormat. And now, you look, and the modern state of Israel has a fairly strong military, and the Israeli martial art of Krav Maga has been invented, and all these different things that lead toward Jewish people once again being willing to defend themselves against foreign powers. And now, after a long time, the Jewish people are very willing to once again fight against oppressive foreign forces. I want to be very clear. What I have presented today is simply supposed to be historically informative. I am in no way, shape, or form trying to incite rebellion or get you to revolt against a government. I'm not even talking about the justifications or lack thereof of rebellions. That's a conversation for a different time on a different channel. And also, I'm not attempting to provide any commentary on modern Jewish people. I just want you to be able to see and understand the progression and the flow of how we got from the time of Jesus to where we are today. But even more than that, what I hope that you see is a little bit of the socio-political climate in Jesus' day and in the centuries immediately before and after. As you can probably tell, it was a highly tumultuous time. The political waters that Jesus and the early church navigated were fraught with danger, no matter which side you were on. Even in Jesus' group of followers, the 12 disciples, there was Matthew the tax collector, who worked on behalf of Rome, and a man named Simon the Zealot, who was probably associated with forces that were highly resistant to Roman rule. And yet through all of the turmoil, Jesus brought people together and broke down barriers, including all sorts of people, right? Both Jew and Gentile, male and female, slaves and free persons, bringing them into his church. And that is truly remarkable when you consider the era that he lived in. But for now, that's our look beyond the Bible. See you next time.